the software that's used for annotation and categorization. Okay. There are other videos available through the website, through the Digital Studies website, where there are people contributing by annotating and categorizing the videos. Okay, that this is part of the project that we're trying to work with together with the group in Paris, but also part of Bernard Stiegler's wider Philip project about reharnessing digital technologies, and through the process of annotation and categorization, we are in one way leading to a process of collective individuation through that process of categorization. Okay, is that clear?
I mean, I think it depends on how it turns out.
Did you hear anything?
Yeah, I could hear it. I'm concerned that my French colleagues may not be able to pick it out. Can you hear it okay?
Yes, it was okay.
So yeah, okay. No, it's okay. Once you keep the microphone close to you, it's fine. We can hear properly.
Okay. So we have some new people in the room today. So we might just sit in the room. Okay. So, yeah. So then we can hear them.
We're getting basic.
Can you? Yeah, testing. Can you hear me all right?
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I just want to check that everybody can hear us. Can you hear us, Nancy and Neil?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, that's fine. All right. Yeah, we just try it.
Yeah, that's better now, I think.
Okay, I think there's two noise coming out of the big speakers that we have.
Okay.
Okay. So we're just going to try it on a smaller set of speakers here, so we can hear you. Yeah, it's a different type of sound. Can you speak again there, Neil?
Testing, testing, testing. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
But you can hear me. That's fine.
Yeah, I think we can hear you a bit better now.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I would note that PayPal and how you get degrees at something sort of like
yeah, I told him.
It's just directly actually not make it possible you can use it. Probably not really on the security apps on top of the crypto. So I think we should love those conversations before the 21st when I meet with Jeff.
Are we ready to continue?
Yeah, yeah. Do you want to do a round of introductions? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, who's in the room on this side, and maybe who's in the room on your side.
Yeah, okay. Well, beside me I have Vincent. You can introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm managing the IRI research team, and my background is mostly in management of computer science and a little bit of philosophy. And I'm running. I've been founding IRI with Bernard in 2006. And formerly, I was in another research center, depending of Centre Pompidou, which is IRCAM, in the music field. So I have a background in computer music, since I've been running a project in this field during my 12 years at IRCAM. Okay.
Then also attending is Simon. He's just to my left here. He's just going to turn the cam so you can see him there.
Hi. I studied with Bernard 10 years ago in the UTC, and I'm now engineer for the cultural industries. I work in the area since 2 years, 2 or 3 years, editing videos in order to build a process of editorialization for the academic world, producing abstract, for instance, of conferences or seminars or courses. So my work takes place before the work with ligne de temps or after the work with ligne de temps. The editorialization processes is take part in the categorization progresses, but it's not exactly the same. It's okay?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Simon. And for those of you who haven't met me, I think most of you have, but my name is Neil Dwyer, and I'm doing my PhD in Trinity. And as part of my PhD, I'm doing a 3-month work placement here with Bernard and Vincent and the team. It's part of my program. We have to do a work placement as part of the program, so it's a great opportunity for me to be able to work at the transition of research, cultural research, which is a very exciting area. And Bernard and Vincent and the team here at the IRI are doing some really interesting things that are very central to my thesis, which is based around the idea of it's based around research in live performance and technology. And that's it from me. Over to your side, Noel.
Okay, my name is Eric Delaney. I'm doing the PhD Neil in Digital Arts and Humanities in Trinity. My research is on remix video.
Hello, my name is Conal Vaughan. I am a philosopher by trade, and I'm a lecturer here in philosophy of art and aesthetics in the IT.
Hello, my name is Pan Pan. I'm doing interactive digital media at Trinity.
Hi, my name is Cormac Dean. I'm from the Department of Film Studies at Trinity College Dublin, and my research is in film theory, embedded screens, multi-screen environments, control rooms, that kind of thing.
Hi, I'm Martin McCabe. I'm the DIT fellow at the GradCam, and I'm a lecturer in photography as well.
I'm Noel Fitzpatrick, Dean of the Graduate School. I have a background in philosophy and theatre, and I'm particularly interested in philosophy of technology at the moment.
Hi, I'm Mick O'Hara. I'm a member of the Aesthetics Seminar Group with Neil and Connell, and I also lecture here in sculpture in the IT.
Hi, I'm Hugh McCabe. I'm a new member of this group. My background is in computer science. I teach digital media and computer technology in Dublin, and I've just finished doing a master's in contemporary art.
That's great, Jim. Okay, so we've established who's in the room here and in Paris. So we had 2 texts that were distributed for today. One was the Introduction to Technique and Time, Volume 1, and the second text was an interview with Bernard. What I might propose for a second is pick up on 1 or 2 key concepts within Bernard's philosophy for a second. One, with distinction that is made between anamnesis and hypnomnesis, which might lead us into discussion because it comes up in the text around individuation and collective individuation. I'm just going to speak maybe just for 2 minutes on this, and then we open it out. When we look into Bernard's work, there's a key point where he revisits Derrida's analysis of the Phaedrus and Derrida's famous text, La Platon, within which Derrida gives a very succinct and detailed analysis of Plato's Phaedrus, wherein we play out a distinction between anamnesis and hypnomnesis, and the primary example that Bernard gives, the same example that Derrida gives, is the text. So without rehearsing the whole argument, within the Phaedrus we have Plato's rejection in one way of writing as a form of hypnomnesis, and that's where we get a key term within Bernard's philosophy, which is the notion of the pharmakon. So the pharmakon is first mentioned in relation to Derrida's text in relation to Plato's Phaedrus, okay? Where hypnomnesis is seen as this cure and poison for memory, as a placeholder for memory. In one way, it enables me to forget, and another way, it enables me to remember. Okay, so the starting point for the whole analysis of pharmacology, therapeutics, comes from this key point where Bernard revisits a distinction that's made between anamnesis and hypnomnesis. Okay. So that's a first gambit to open this out. I don't know if there's any comments on that, either on this side or on your side, Neil.
Well, I can venture a comment on it if you like. I guess my understanding of the introduction of the concept of the pharmakon is to critique the tradition of classical philosophical analysis, and that is a strategy of breaking things into binaries and setting up opposites. And I guess what Bernard a really useful example of this is of how he critiques this process and feels that it's not the classical tradition of dialectical analysis is not sufficient, is in his critique of Adorno, I think, of the Frankfurt School in particular, and he discusses this in the introduction of Techniques and Time, where he says that the strategy is it's only seeing one point of view. It's only seeing the negative point of view of cultural cultural hegemony of for example, like it's seeing culture as a negative thing, and I think that what Bernard is saying in Techniques and Time is that there is in effect every cloud has a silver lining. There's always already the positive embedded within the negative aspects. Anybody else want to?
Well, maybe to give you a little bit practical perception of the pharmakon. Mm-hmm. Our work here at Erie is trying to figure out a little bit what could be called the dynamicity of the pharmacon. By dynamicity of the pharmacon, I mean that in the current digital context that we all face, and that's where the people here at IRI are mainly working on. It's on digital objects and digital systems. We are, you know, there is a kind of alternative. And some people are arguing for the first one, which is making a break. Meaning that in order to get rid of the dark side of the pharmacon, you need to disconnect. So you need to manage in your practices, in your digital practices, you need to manage breaks. Means completely disconnecting from the digital environment in which all we are, in fact, like swimming. This is a way to maybe figure out a little and understanding the question of the pharmacon, but it's probably not the solution that Bernard is envisioning. But we have to consider this option. It's a serious option, and there is I don't know in your country, but in France there is some strong advocate for this idea of disconnecting. For instance, people at here in Paris, the Internet Foundation, the new Internet thing, Fondation Internet Nouvelle Génération, New Generation Internet Foundation. That's their motto, I would say. Another way of dealing with this pharmacological aspects is what I propose to call dealing with the dynamicity of the pharmacon, meaning that in all the digital systems that we are using, there is a part which is based on automation, on calculus, on calculation. And either you decide to stop the algorithm and to take time to interpret, understand, talk, exchange in human conditions, or you try to go as far as possible in using the automation of the system. And this, I think, is probably the most challenging way, but that's the way we are a little bit keen on targeting at IRI, is to see how far we can go in using automation, especially when I mean automation, I mean automation of the intellectual processes. Everything that you can delegate to an external body, which is the computer. And this, of course, is very dangerous, is very toxical, because if you go too far in delegating your intelligence to the computer, you may not be able to come back. So we have to pay a very particular attention to the interface between the algorithm and the people. This is why at IRI we work a lot on design the interface and design all the intellectual interfaces, because we need to go as far as possible in the automation direction, but we need to be able to come back into the what we call the hermeneutic context. Hermeneutic context for us is the place where the anamnesis is called. So it's in another word, pushing the pharmacology as far as possible in the direction of automation means using as much as possible the hypomnesis, but in order that you leverage, you have, because you have pushed the hypomnesis context very far, you end up with an anamnesis or anamnesis conditions which are very high also. This is a challenge, and this is the bet, I would say. We don't know yet, but I think we have some situation where we see that it works. It means that we have a certain trust in the digital systems. And trust in the digital systems rely on a lot of conditions. Open source, open software, ability to understand how the algorithm functions, what were the premises for building the algorithm and the automation. So all these type of conditions are the basis of the truth that we can put into the system, and as much truth we have, as much we can go further in the hypomnesis context in order to leverage the anamnesis possibility. What Bernard called the ability to develop the dreams. So for Bernard, the dream is a condition of the technique, and especially a condition of the hypomnesis. So with a high hypomnesis, you have higher and better conditions for dreams. We could say it a little bit like that, but that's my personal perception. But it's a little bit a perception of computer builder, if you know, or computer software builder. But it's my interpretation of Bernard thought. That's just a proposition. Do you want to add something on the dreams or not?
I don't know if I can add something. Maybe the fact that if you put the hypomnesis far, the danger is also important. Yes. To be prioritized. But for the understanding of pharmacology or pharmacon, you can maybe study the courses Bernard gave this year. Unfortunately, it is in French, but he explains that the pharmacology is also in the philosophy history a tactic to recall the tragic tradition, to criticize the idealist tradition. So the pharmacology could be, in one hand, something to critique the materialism and to critique what is done with techniques, what Google is doing to the humanity and to the becoming of humanity. And in the other hand, a criticism a critique of the idealism, or a new critique of 2,000 years of philosophy. But it's very lacunar as an argument.
It's very what? It's very shortly said.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
Okay. Anybody want to pick up on the site? I just want to pick up on one thing that Lansdowne said there for a second, all right? When you use the hermeneutic context, could you elaborate a little bit what you mean by that? By the hermeneutic context.
Hermeneutic. Oh yes, yes. Maybe interpretation, but I give you another computer-related example.
Okay.
There has been for some years a lot of research on automation of the meaning, automation of the meaning, and that's what is called the semantic web. Yeah. So in this context, in fact, we as computer scientists try to automatize as much as possible the intelligence, the part of the intelligence which is calculable, and especially the part which is related to categories and classification and things like that. So this was this is a big trend, and it is very important, and there is a lot of very interesting research that we need to use, that we need to integrate in our practice. A second trend of research which has been very important is the fact that the web is no longer dealing with relations, semantic relations, or relations between concepts, but relations between people. This is what is called social web, if you like. And what is interesting is that social web is also computable. It's also a basis for computation, as we know, with the social networks, for instance, or the graph theories. Now, we think that in between semantic web and social web, there is a need for another kind of web, which could be called hermeneutic web. Hermeneutic in the sense of interpretation, or if we, but Simon can maybe elaborate on that because he's a specialist of Hermes. Because in fact, hermeneutic comes from Hermes, the god of interpretation, god of writing, and the god of interpretation. And this hermeneutic web for us is still to come. We would like to make propositions, even to the W3C, for instance, formats, standards enabling not only the definition of links between concepts or between people, but also a place for discussing, analyzing these links, criticizing these links, if you like. It's a kind of reflexivity on the links that are built either in the semantic web or in the social web. So it's not to say that social web and semantic web are over and are not interesting. Of course, this is very big trends, I think, that are for a long time. But it's this idea of being able to give to the people, and I mean to the people, not only to the computer scientists, and to everybody, the ability to interpret this means an effort to document the links, document the way the links are made and the way the algorithm are managing these links. And we believe that this could be another period of the web, the hermeneutic web. But that's in this sense that we talk about hermeneutic, which is in my view, of course, is very practical. But in Bernard philosophy, of course, it would be probably necessary to come back to Hermès and to the interpretation that Bernard gives of hermeneutic in the Plateau context, of course. I don't know if you can say more about this part of the interpretation basis dans Platon. I don't know si je te laisse te lancer là-dessus.
In fact, what Bernard said, I speak again about the courses. Plato, in the Republic, quit with anamnesis. And he quit with interpretation, trying to give one way of thinking for the city, and it was the beginning of idealism, and it was spread after that with Christianism of Saint Paul. Saint Paul said there is one way to interpret the Bible. What was deconstructed by
Protestantism,
which recalls the interpretation. In fact, with the Protestantism, we've got an example of how the hypomnesis of the book help the interpretation, the real interpretation of the writing, and the Protestantism is, to my mind, based on the fact that the believer has to reinterpret the Bible for himself and make an anamnesis for himself, instead of being guided by the one way to think.
So it's a shift from the top down to the bottom up.
All right. Yes.
Yeah.
This is
a re-enabling of the citizen.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
But also allows for a conflict of interpretation.
Sorry?
It also allows for a conflict of interpretation.
Yes. But conflict of interpretation is what empowers the research, the research progress.
Yes. It's a positive conflict. It's not a negative conflict.
No.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks, Simon.
Anybody here want to intervene?
Hermeneutic web is like, well, I don't know. People, is the hermeneutic web then is web 3.0, or it doesn't have it refuses that designation maybe? No.
Sometimes it is using 3.0 to designate this hermeneutic web, but I'm not very confident with this, .0 mood, or it's always we are always the .0 of something else. So it's it's a little bit dangerous to use this way of thinking. But yeah, you're right. You may say. only if you accept to consider that 2.0 is a social web, and that in fact semantic web was already in place. I mean, at least the basis with the advent of the web, and that could be agreed, because even the first search engines were in fact doing interpretation of relations between metadata. I would say it was much more based on metadata that were placed by humans, but it was already a kind of semantic exploitation of the web at the beginning.
So there's an overlap clearly between these periodizations or developments or whatever, but they're not clear cut yet. It's for short-term neatness then that we would do something like that. Okay.
Anybody else? Okay. Do you want to go back maybe towards the readings that you had?
Sure, yeah.
I'm just kind of interested to see if there's people on this side of the table who have comments specifically in relation to the text that we had for today.
Yeah.
Yeah. More, just to come back to maybe the introduction, I'm interested in Bernd Stiegler's mobilization of Heidegger, and especially his talk of techniques in relation to Heidegger. And I'm just trying to, I suppose, fully understand which part is he drawing from? Is it being in time, perhaps, Division 1, or is it more to the later work in Heidegger? I just wondering if anyone had any thoughts on that. Just to throw it out there. If that's okay. Yeah, so it's a question. Yeah, I suppose maybe to frame it, focus it a bit more. I'm particularly interested myself in relation to how the body is implicated in any concept of techniques, and I suppose the classic example that Heidegger gives in Division 1 is of tool use is the hammer hammering and the hammer becoming transparent. But he never acknowledges the role of the body in that instinct, and I'm just wondering if Stiegler's use of techniques possibly passes over the body in a similar way that Heidegger does. That's a kind of major question, I suppose, but it's just one that I'm particularly interested in.
I don't know if anybody can answer for Bernard. Maybe no, you might have.
Yeah, I think if you look at Le Gros, what you have is an analysis of movement towards techniques, which is completely out. He talks about moving, from the hand gesture as an embodied technology. So maybe the criticism towards Heidegger is that Heidegger does in one way pass over the body, where you have the hammer hammering, the ready to hand, etc. Whereas I think in Bernard's way, because he sees the Walgiro and a notion within anthropology of the jest and the gesture that you actually have an embodiment of the technique from the beginning. You see what I mean? So if we think that it's true an anthropological understanding of what techniques are within Bernard's work, that is linked to a notion of gesture through.
I think we've lost the audio. Can you still hear me? No, I think we've lost the audio. Can you still hear me at your end?
Can you hear us?
Oh yeah, I can. Yeah, I can hear you again now. Thanks.
Sorry, just on that point about the technical and the body. I recall from the introduction, Stiegler talked about the technical being between the organic and the inorganic. So I don't know if that's the way it's kind of related to the body to some degree without, you know, passing over. So yeah, I guess I don't know if that's one way to think about it.
I suppose the reason for asking that the question was just so I was quite interested in this when you talked about automation and how that may integrate concepts of the body. Is it possible to say a bit more in relation to that, or yeah, to Vincent?
He's asking about automation in relation to the body.
Yeah.
In the context of Heidegger.
Yeah.
But also kind of computer science as well. Or developments of computer science and this, you know, I suppose.
Yeah.
Maybe the project, the annotation of jest.
You know, well, first on Heidegger, it's not for us. It has some limits, and Bernard is, in fact, I think, quite critical against Heidegger, especially in my understanding, especially of the text of Heidegger related to techniques. There is a fundamental problem with Heidegger, is that he considers technique as a way to master nature. Raisonnement de la nature. How to translate?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So it is very problematic because, as you very well mentioned, for Bernard, the distinction between culture and nature is not operating. There is really a conception of a technical. He is not using the term technical now. He's using the term organological. There is an organology which can be biological, technological, or social. But all these dimensions of the organology are really intertwined and can be interpreted and thought globally in what he's calling the general organology. Saying that, it's not very useful to go back too much to Heidegger, but on other aspects it's useful, of course, to go back to Heidegger, maybe more on metaphysics and the question of being and the question of ontology. But for us, again, in practical terms, dealing with this concept of general organology opens a lot of new ideas for digital interfaces, because we consider that there should not be barriers or frontiers between the digital and the body. It's a kind of continuum that is to be explored. Of course, there is still a lot of discontinuities and a lot of breaks. Some people are advocating for the breaks and the bugs. It's important to consider them, but it's also important to try to explore as much as possible the continuity between the body and the mind, if you like, the body and the intellectual processes that are more and more delegated to the machine. This is why at IRI we try to develop physical devices or motion capture systems, very simple, using Kinects or tactile interfaces. And what we are interested in is not so much the skill of the body or the virtuosity, if you like, but more what we call the motricity, the sensory motor loops. that's in fact when your process with the sensor device gives you a direct return in the brain. It means that you have, it's a bit like writing, you know, it's a good example. When you learn how to write with a pen, you have a kind of direct sensory motricity loop between your gesture and your mind and your brain. And so the interest of physical devices or motion capture systems is to find these loops, sometimes very simple loops, and the loops in themselves are not very interesting. Sometimes they are very simple. But what is interesting is the process, the process of the loop, the capacity of thinking about something new because of the motion that you have performed. So this is in Simondon, we would say that we are interested in the technical milieu, which is between the body and the mind. Of course, between the interpreted body, because the body can be interpreted thanks to the devices that we have now, even if they are very poor at the moment, and the interpreted mind, because the mind is also externalized in the digital systems. So this is more the type of inactive context that we try to explore, and it's up to my knowledge, but I'm not very familiar with all Heidegger, but it is not so. It doesn't refer too much to Heidegger work at this level, at least.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, about Heidegger, I'm not a philosopher, so it will be short. But I had there is a mondo historiality concept in Heidegger, I think, Weltlichkeit, that is rejected by Heidegger, I think, and is taken by Stigler as a tertiary retention, and maybe it's the treatment of the mondo historiality can understand to your question. There is also the fact that for Stigler we are out of the biological evolution, but in technological evolution. Human life is not a Darwinian evolution, and but a technical one. The genius, no, les gènes, technologie des gènes. Genetics,
the genes, the genetic, yeah,
is the fact.
Is a technical fact.
The technical fact that we are out of any biological simple evolution. And I think there is a question about automatization and body. For Stigler, the automatization is nowadays general. There is we could say a shock of automatization that, for instance, will destroy employment. Stigler said in the last seminar that, to his mind, we are running through the destruction of all employment, so we are running through economical catastrophe.
Mm-hmm. Economic catastrophe, yeah.
Yes. It was a point to illustrate the question about the body and automatization and general automatization. I don't know if it's give you answer or clues. Yeah.
I suppose just related back to the reading on hyper and steep attention, I suppose, just in that regard, and this notion of pushing automation far. I'm just wondering how far, what is the ambition of the potential that's seen there in relation to, um, yeah, hip, I can never pronounce it. Hypnomnesis. Sorry. So it's another question. Sorry.
Sorry, deep attention and hyperattention.
Well, no, it was more like if I say this correctly, Michael, is it you're asking to what extent should it be pushed? Is this like relating it back to the pharmacon? Is this pushing this idea to the limit?
Yeah.
And to what extent should it be pushed?
Yeah, or can it, or is it intended that it can be pushed? In relation to forms of attention, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah, you're right to raise this relation. There is you refer maybe to the links that Bernard is very often making with Catherine Hale's theory of attention, and where she defines two main forms of attention. Hyperattention, when we are, in fact, what Bernard called synchronicity, and deep attention, when we are dissatisfied with the computer system, but where, in fact, we are more in the context of anamnesis and the context of dreams. It is true that you can make a parallel between hypomnesis and anamnesis and hyperattention, deep attention. It could be made, even if the question of attention is mainly, for Bernard, originated in Husserl context, where attention is dependent of the retentions, especially the combination of primary and secondary retention stored in the tertiary retentions. So, and that is producing the attention, in fact. The articulation of this retention is producing attention, but it's already said by Husserl, in fact. So there is a there is a relation between the conditions for anamnesis is related, of course, to this articulation of retention and protensions. It is true, and Bernard is arguing about that in the Techniques and Time, especially in volume 3 on the time of cinema.
Okay, thanks. Is there anybody else? So maybe just to pick up on tertiary retention for a second. In the last seminar we had with this group, we looked at Catherine Hale's text on hypertension. I think that's the link that's been made. So
Yeah,
just
that's right.
to make a question for a second, I think you were trying to ask Mick what the limits of that pushing out, the pushing out of optimization, what are the possible limits to it? But I think that's a very difficult question to ask, because from what I understand from Vincent, I mean, this is an ongoing experiment about what the possible limits could be. I don't think they have. I don't think they have been established. Would that be fair, Vincent?
Yeah. It's sometimes we try in certain conditions, in certain digital context, we try not so much to use Catherine Hale's concept, but to try to articulate synchronicity and asymmetry and synchronicité et diachronicité. Yeah, synchronicity and diachronicity. So the fact that it's a pharmacological process, because you may have some synchronous situation where you individualize yourself. Just thinking about love. It's a synchronous process where you individualize a lot yourself and the other. But there is a lot of situation where synchronization means disindividuation. So shortcuts in the individuation processes, especially when confronting yourself with the machine. Same thing for diachronicity. Diachronicity is the basis of hermeneutic. It's the dialogue. It's coming from the Plato situation, the situation of dialogism. But it can be this dialogic situation can be, I would say, unequal or unbalanced, and so there is some one part of one person may be individualizing more than another. Situations can be unbalanced, but there is a pharmacological situation, both in a synchronous situation, which could be similar to what Catherine Hales is describing as hyperattention, and there is pharmacological situation in a dialogical context, which is close to deep attention, especially when you are in a deep attention to somebody, or deep attention to the text, or to a book. Tu as d'autres peut-être références sur la diachronicité plus que nous?
Maybe the anamnesis is the deep attention. When you do an anamnesis, you are bringing back what was forgotten. So you are attentive. You get an attention for what was forgotten, for what was buried. So you are in the deep things of yourself. While the hyperattention could be linked with the hypomnesis that is consumed and
like ephemeral.
Yes, like ephemeral. Maybe my English is very bad.
No, it's okay.
I'm sorry. So there is, yes, maybe the deeper attention could be linked with anamnesis and with interpretation. Can we produce an interpretation of something we don't really care, or in something we are not in an attention, deep attention? But so today we are more speaking about anamnesis, about interpretation than about deep or hyper attention.
I can give you a concrete, very concrete example of systems that we test very often. It's the use of Etherpad, or the pads in general. So it meaning the writing systems where you can write with other people at the same time. The observation that we've made on this type of situation shows very clearly that there is a possible toxicity of these systems because the systems tend to synchronize your attention to what the system is producing. It means what the other people are producing, and that at the first level, it tends to be very toxic, unless, and that's a little bit what Catherine Hales says, because she's not opposing hyper attention and deep attention. She's just saying that this needs to be articulated with proper rules. And in Etherpad, you may end up with a very productive situation if there is certain rules. For instance, identification of certain competencies to some people. It's a bit like a musical orchestra, if you like. If you want to be able to play with the other musicians, you need to know them. You need to understand how they play, what is their skills, and otherwise you do noise, and that's very often the problem with this Etherpad collective writing situations. So just to give an example of a very careful attention between synchronicity and diachronicity with the digital tools.
So was this a technology that you developed? Was this a software that you developed?
Oh no, it's a very common software that you can use on internet. It's called Etherpad. Etherpad.
Oh, okay.
You have several systems. You may use Framapad or Pirate Pad. There is a lot of different tools for doing this, and it's very often used in schools currently, at least in France. With the schools we are working with are more and more using these systems because it's also a factor of motivation for the students, because it's a little bit a situation where they can show up. So it has the same problems that Facebook has. It's a question also of exposition of exposition of oneself.
Yeah.
And the balance that you must always try to make between your individual, your psychic individuation and the collective individuation. You may always find the right balance. Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts from your end, Noel?
Yeah, well, it's to try and find that balance, which is very difficult. I mean, I've been involved in a lot.
The sound is gone again. Aidan, the sound is gone again. We can't hear you. Hello? The sound is gone. Shit, my sound is gone as well, isn't it?
He can't hear us.
No.
You can hear me? Hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, now I can, yeah. It's
Okay.
back.
So
Sorry.
you missed everything I said.
Oh, pretty much everything you said, actually.
Will I repeat what I said?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Okay. So what I was saying was that it's a very fine balance that's needed, and sometimes in the past where I've been involved with e-learning projects, what we end up with is a lot of noise, where we don't actually get that collective process working properly. I've got very specific examples here where we have used wikis with students to collaborate and to write together, and I would say sometimes it's been very unsuccessful. So I think the challenge is to find that balance between the two. Okay, but the question I had was slightly different. So I'm intrigued by the notion of synchronicity and diachronicity in relation to hermeneutics. I mean, Hermes has been mentioned a few times, and Hermes is also the god of messages and messaging. And I was just wondering if you could comment on the relationship between the diachronicity and hermeneutics, because that was mentioned there. What's the relationship between the two? Maybe
between diachronicity and
hermeneutic.
Hermeneutic. Oh.
Well, it's a kind of layering. I presume it's a kind of layering of historical interpretation.
Layering. Des feuilles de l'histoire. De la histoire. Des feuilles de la histoire. C'est ça. Layers of history.
Des couches d'histoire.
Yeah, change over time.
Basically, the process of transindividuation over hermeneutics is this what you mean? No.
Has been used a good few times, and I'm just picking up maybe on a slightly different meaning that's given to the Greek god Hermes. Sometimes is also the Greek god of messages and messaging. And in relation to a distinction that's made between synchronicity and diachronicity, I was wondering if you could explain what's the relationship, or why speak of hermeneutics and diachronicity together. I was just wondering what the idea was behind it.
The history of Hermes is it is certainly complex. There is Hermes arrived in the world while human beings with techniques destroyed themselves. So thus asked Hermes to bring the humans, the mortals, decay and eidos. Decay and eidos that are la pudeur and justice and pudeur. Shame. Don't know that word. And justice must be interpreted. So justice is hermeneutics. The interpretation is a diachronicity. if I produce an interpretation, is to my mind is not the same. If I watch something, I will interpret it another way than Vincent or Nail. So interpretation is in a part of the diachronicity, but the question is complex because it also what can bring the city united. The tragical tradition, the goal of the tradition, the tragical tradition was to unite the city and to produce a unity with a multiplicity, to produce a synchronicity with the diachronicity. It is a complexity. There is diachronicity, there is interpretation, but it must produce an unity of the city, and it is what sometimes don't work. It is what happened during the Trent tyranny, the tyranny of the Trent.
The tyranny of the
Trent.
In Athens.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And Plato decided to quit with hermeneutics and with the Republic to produce a kind of
a doctrine for the Republic.
Dictatorship.
Mm-hmm.
To bring the unity of the city. The tragical tradition with the debates try to produce an unity based on the multiplicity, producing an unity from the bottom up, combining bottom up and top down. While did I answer?
Yeah, I'm thinking at the same time as you're talking. Yeah. It's good because I would see another tradition of hermeneutics, which would be Paul Ricoeur, Gadamer. I would see within phenomenology from Heidegger onwards, we've also had a different tradition of hermeneutics. I would think particularly of Paul Ricoeur.
Oh, I don't know.
No, but if we go back to the notion of the hermeneutic web for a second, we could envisage, as we said earlier on, that Ricoeur has a very good book called Conflict of Interpretation. Within the conflict of interpretation for interpretations.
With some words.
Interpretation. Did they?
The sound popped out there again when you were talking.
You're missing the best bit. Okay, what I said was that there's, I don't know what you missed, but there's another tradition of hermeneutics which comes from Heidegger to Paul Ricoeur and Gadamer. Within, well, we'd have a difference between Gadamer and Ricoeur around the notion of distanciation and something which is positive or something which is negative. And within Ricoeur in particular, we have a notion of an open-ended hermeneutics, which is a process of conflict of interpretation. So that kind of picks up on what you said, Simon. You go back to Plato, the Republic, and you see that in one way, you could argue, I think this is the argument that's been made, is that there's a change within Plato towards a dictatorship, as you put it, within the Republic, which moves away from this open-ended conflict of interpretation, which Kerr would see as something which is essentially positive. So I'm just commenting on what you said.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if there's any other comments in the room here. No. Yeah.
Hi, this is Cormac Dean. I haven't spoken yet today. What you've just been talking about reminds me of something that's in the introduction, or excuse me, in the interview text that we were reading. That is when Stiegler summarizes what Paul Virilio says about politics in an age of excessive speed. That when mechanization has taken control, that there's no space, there's no time left, rather, for political decisions to be made. Can I hear?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
And this is a question that concerns me in my research, which is to do with narratives to do with political violence, screen narratives, film and television, where the power or decisive kind of macho taking of power is always a very important event, the kind of a dictatorial act, which destroys all possibility of other interpretations. And so what's striking is when you watch very contemporary political narratives, you have extremely technological situations, people in control rooms, people watching missiles moving across screens that they can control, and you have a state of high automation, and in the midst of that, there is a weird politics of extreme dictatorial tendencies going on. So I should say I'm new to Stiegler. I'm attracted to the ideas that he talks about because these are the questions that are interesting to me. What is the space for autonomy? How much can we regard ourselves as being in control of automation? And okay, maybe I'll crystallize this by posing this question. It might be a naive question, and this is to everybody here in this room too. Does Stiegler give us grounds for optimism or for pessimism when it comes to technology, to contemporary technology? It's a deliberately naive way of putting it, but it's a key question for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's quite evocative of the pharmacon, or the pharmacon is a good way of returning to that question, because I think that he's probably neither positing a positive or a negative. I think it's the fact that both are there, and in relation to, I suppose, in relation to that example that you gave in the military example and linked to politics, I guess in its the omnipotence of the technology negates, well, not completely negates, but it negates total war. But this is the example that he gave in was it in the introduction or in the interview? He talked about it, Derrida giving a talk about how the atomic bomb was the pharmacon par excellence, in that the very existence of the atomic bomb negated the possibility for nuclear war, because it's just far too dangerous, and nobody wants to go that far. But the threat is there, and I guess maybe to a lesser extent you could probably think about that in relation to speed and politics, and the the transition of power. In a way, it's almost like any politics to any kind of, let's see, how do I want to say this? I guess that any really effective change is kind of nullified to a certain extent by the by the existence of these automated, by the allocation of serious decisions to automated processes, negates or kind of passes over it's like passing the buck. It's like passing the responsibility. And I think we've kind of reached a kind of an impasse almost in technocratic states. I don't know. For me, I think politics is really kind of quite muted now, to be honest. Nobody really offers anything kind of different. I mean, maybe except for, you know, I guess in France you've got the threat of the Front National, but in its very existence it mobilizes people to keep it suppressed. Like, what do you guys think? Back to you. I don't know if I said anything there at all, but
I may give you a personal answer, because the question, of course, as Neil very well said, is not pertinent for Bernard, because pessimist or optimist is not in his vocabulary, because it's precisely contradictory with his pharmacon ideas. But I would consider him as an optimist who is considered as a pessimist. So, you know, it's, to my opinion, it's very difficult to put a label on Stigler with this type of words, because it's always based on the relation that people are trying to put from themselves to Stigler thought. But it's not at all a will from Bernard to give either optimist views or pessimistic views. Sometimes he's trying to shock a little bit the people with very dramatic situations, but I don't think the pessimist optimist vocabulary is fitting at all with this discourse.
Okay. Just a little bit after 7 o'clock here.
Yeah.
Your time.
It's a little bit after 8 over here.
Yeah, I think we might wrap this up. I'd like to thank Vincent and Simon. This is our first attempt at this. I think it worked well, and I'm really glad that it worked technically. Good input, particularly on the power side. Okay, and we try and organize this again in the near future.
Pleasure.
Yeah, I'd like to especially thank Simon and Vincent for engaging in this dialogue in English, because it's extremely difficult. I can tell you, I've sat through seminars over here, in a foreign language, and it's very difficult. So I really would like to extend my thanks.
We'll work for the next time. We'll improve.
If there is any people from your team, Noel, who wish to attend certain seminars in the future, we will try to publicize more on the diffusion of the seminar. But unfortunately, they are very often in French at this time of the year. But as you know, because we proposed to you to talk, there will be a series of digital studies seminar with English-speaking people. So at this very moment, we will, of course, send you more recommendation to listen because we webcast most of our seminars because we have the technical facilities for that, and it's not Hangout, but it's a web streaming, so it's very comfortable for the hearings. So we will let you know, of course, the dates for this digital studies. You may already listen to the David Bates video, which is a little bit the #1, if you like, on the digital studies website. And this video recording has been annotated very carefully by several people here at HERE. So it may be also useful for you. Well, even if David Bates is speaking in French, actually, but there is a text in English. Yeah. It's possible to follow the video with the text.
Maybe with David's permission, I can circulate the text in English to the.
Yeah, sure. You can.
The other thing is, the plan is to make this.
Oh yes, and for this discussion of today, it would be very nice to try to, I wouldn't say make a final editorialization, but a kind of maybe putting some markers on the question we raised, because I have to confess that I am not in a capacity to answer to most of your questions, and Bernard would be, of course, much more skilled and able to follow up the question you raised today. But maybe we could consider this first seminar as a kind of naive introspection in the digital studies philosophy and context, and this may be very useful for at least for myself. It is useful to try to follow up on the question you raised, because they were very sound to me.
So I will make this available on the
yes.
website.
Yes.
And give them access to annotate, right?
It could, what we made today in our vocabulary is called an hermeneutic workshop. Exactly, because we have made an interpretation of the text you choose, and we had a discussion trying to interpret probably very naive ways, or with our own references. For me, at least, most of these references are not philosophical, but more practical and computer-based. But it's typically what is called for us an hermeneutic workshop.
Okay, great.
Maybe I've got an answer for the optimist or pessimist question.
Go ahead.
It is the polemos father everything, or the more there is adversity, the more Stigler is active, and the adversity is a stimulation.
Adversity or dramatization of the situation. So when Stigler is considered as a pessimist, it is because he believes that getting a very pessimistic opinion or advice or position may bring some light to the people. It's the virtue of the polemos.
Yes, or the more the situation is terrible, the more it gave him resources to fight back.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Okay, will we hang up? Décrocher?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Merci.
Bye-bye.
Bye.